It was meant to be a joke, a cruel, thoughtless joke, but the moment Gabriel drove away, leaving me in a foreign town, everything changed. I stood frozen, the weight of betrayal sinking in as his laughter echoed through the air. Would he come back? Or had I been abandoned for good? What was I supposed to do now, alone in a town I couldn't even pronounce? Little did I know, that single moment would be the beginning of a journey that would lead me to something far more unexpected than I could have ever imagined. It was supposed to be a simple vacation, a chance for us to escape our daily routine and reconnect. Gabriel, my husband, had invited me along to join him on a trip to Italy, where he and his friends were supposed to celebrate their annual reunion. At first, I felt out of place, an outsider among Gabriel's college buddies, but I did my best to blend in. We had argued before the trip, but I didn't expect this. I didn't expect the day would end with me standing alone in an unfamiliar town, stranded without a way to return. The day had started like any other on our trip, but it quickly took a turn. Over lunch, Gabriel drank far too much, egged on by his friends, who found it amusing to watch him get progressively more intoxicated. I had pleaded with him to slow down, to stop. I didn't want to spend the whole day watching him stumble around, but it only made him angry. His friends laughed and taunted me, telling me I was being controlling. At first, I ignored them, but when Gabriel suggested heading back to the hotel, one of his friends, Pete, mocked me, saying I was just trying to control everything. Gabriel, slurring his words, followed me outside. "Your purse has your passport, right?" He sneered as he climbed into the driver's seat. "You'll figure it out. You're so smart, always telling me what to do." He slammed the door, and with that, they drove off, leaving me standing there in the growing twilight. I called out to him, half in disbelief, but the sound of the engine fading in the distance drowned out my voice. Panic started to set in. At first, I thought it was just a joke, something to scare me, but as the minutes ticked by and the street around me grew darker, I realized it wasn't. He was serious. I had been abandoned. My stomach twisted as I stood there, watching the taillights of their rental car disappear around a narrow corner. I felt a sting in my chest, the weight of humiliation settling in. I had been left behind in a town I couldn't even pronounce, with nothing but a small amount of cash, €80 and $37, and my phone. I tried to call Gabriel. 27 calls went unanswered. Text messages sent but no response. It wasn't just a spontaneous act of anger, it was deliberate, a calculated humiliation. He had planned this. I could feel the sting of betrayal deep in my gut as the realization washed over me. The night grew colder, and I was forced to seek shelter. I found a dingy room above a bakery, the only affordable place I could manage with the little money I had left. The elderly woman who showed me to my room didn't speak English, but she patted my arm sympathetically, as if she understood my situation. It was a far cry from the luxury I had been used to back home in Boston, but it was all I had now. That night, I tried calling everyone. Pete, Marco, anyone who had been in the car with us. But each call ended in frustration, as I was met with blocked numbers. I was truly alone. My mind raced as I lay on the uncomfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what had just happened. Gabriel's laughter echoed in my mind as I replayed the events of the afternoon. I thought, perhaps in the morning, things would be different. Gabriel would come back, apologize, and I would be angry, but relieved. We would go back to our life, to the comfortable, predictable routine. But as the hours passed, I knew deep down that something inside me had already changed. I had never felt so alone, so small. And yet, a part of me wondered, what if this was the moment I needed to start over? What if this betrayal was the beginning of something new? But first, I had to survive this night, alone in a foreign country, with no plan, no money, and no way to escape. The following morning, I woke to the harsh light filtering through the small, cracked window. The scent of warm bread from the bakery below mixed with the stale air in the room, reminding me of how far I had fallen from the life I knew. My stomach growled, but the little money I had left wasn't enough for a proper meal. I stared at my phone. Still no response from Gabriel. A deep sense of abandonment gnawed at me, but it was quickly replaced by a rising determination. I couldn't wait for him. I couldn't keep hoping he'd come back and fix this. I counted the small amount of cash I had left. €80 and $37. It wasn't enough for a flight home, and my credit cards were in Gabriel's wallet. The fear of being stuck here without any resources weighed heavily on me, but I wasn't going to sit and wait for him to return, not after the humiliation of being left behind. There had to be a way out of this, even if it meant making a drastic decision. I made my way down the narrow, dimly lit street, my shoes clicking against the cobblestones. I felt like a stranger in this place, isolated and lost. Every turn I took seemed to lead me further away from the life I had once known. Gabriel's friends had carried on with their trip, leaving me here as if I didn't matter at all. As I walked past a small cafe, I hesitated, but the kindly woman behind the counter noticed my aimless wandering and offered me a cup of espresso. Her broken English, paired with warm gestures, felt like a lifeline in that moment. She could see the desperation in my eyes, and in that small, almost imperceptible way, she gave me a sense of comfort, though I barely knew her. She pointed to the local police station, the only place where I might get any assistance. I nodded gratefully, clinging to the hope that I might somehow find a solution. The police station, though small and poorly equipped, was my only option. The officer there listened to my story with a bored expression, clearly accustomed to tourists in distress. With limited communication, we managed to file a report, but it was clear that nothing would come of it. I couldn't rely on them for help. I had to rely on myself. Back on the street, I walked aimlessly, lost in thought. My situation was becoming more dire, and there was only one option left. I would have to leave Italy. I had no other choice. But where could I go? I needed a place far enough away where Gabriel and his friends wouldn't think to look for. I considered calling my family, but that would mean explaining everything, facing the uncomfortable truth about Gabriel's behavior, and hearing my mother's, "I told you so." I couldn't bear it. Not yet. Then, in the corner of my eye, I saw the bus station. The electronic board above displayed destinations I had only read about in travel magazines, places I never imagined I would find myself. Without thinking, I walked up to the ticket counter, asking for the furthest destination they could offer. The woman behind the counter smiled kindly. "Greece," she said. "Greece." I didn't know why, but it felt right. It was far enough, a place where I could disappear and rebuild without the constant reminder of what I had lost. The decision was made. The ticket was bought, and just like that, I was on my way, carrying only the barest essentials and a shattered heart. As the bus rattled through winding roads, the sense of finality set in. The life I had known was gone. Gabriel's face, once so familiar, was now a distant memory, fading into the past with every mile I put between us. But in the pit of my stomach, a strange feeling began to stir. A flicker of freedom, an unexpected thrill of possibility. What would life be like on my own? Could I start over? I didn't know, but for the first time in a long time, I felt as though I might be on the brink of something new. The road to Greece was long, and I had no plan beyond finding a place to rest for the night. But as I looked out the window at the passing landscape, a tiny spark of hope began to grow. The first glimmer of something better than the life I had left behind. The bus ride to Greece felt endless, each mile stretching further from the life I had known. When I finally arrived, I stepped off the bus into a quiet village, the smell of salt and olive trees filling the air. My body ached from exhaustion, the result of long hours of travel with only a few hours of sleep. I had no idea where I was, no map, and barely enough money to get by. But there was something strangely comforting about the simplicity of the place. The village felt different from everything I had left behind in Italy and Boston. It felt raw, real, and untouched by the complications of my past life. My phone had died somewhere between countries, and with it, the last connection to Gabriel and my old life. The quiet was almost suffocating, but it also gave me the space to breathe for the first time in what felt like years. I had no plan. Only a vague sense that I needed to find a place to rest and fast. I wandered aimlessly through the village, my feet sore from the ill-fitting sandals I had packed. I couldn't help but wonder how I had ended up here, so far from everything familiar. My mind kept drifting back to Gabriel, his cruel joke, the way he had abandoned me with no explanation. How had I let it go on for so long? But there was no time to dwell on those thoughts now. I needed to survive. and that meant finding food and shelter. As I walked, I noticed an elderly woman sitting outside a small stone house, knitting as she watched the world pass by. Her face was weathered by time, but her eyes were kind, and something about her felt comforting. I didn't know why, but I was drawn to her. I must have looked as lost as I felt, because when she saw me standing there, her eyes softened and she waved me over. "Come, child, you look tired," she said in broken English, motioning for me to sit beside her. She didn't ask questions, just offered me a glass of cool water, and with it, a warmth I hadn't felt in days. I was hesitant at first. So many strangers had been nothing but cruel, but there was something genuine in her kindness that made me stay. Her name was Elena, and she lived with her husband, Nikos, in a small farmhouse just outside the village. Elena didn't seem to mind that I had no words to explain my situation, and somehow, we communicated through the simplest gestures. She offered me a bed in their home for the night, which I accepted with gratitude. It wasn't much, a small room with whitewashed walls and a narrow bed, but it was the first time since being abandoned that I felt safe. The tension in my chest began to loosen, just a little. The next few days passed slowly. Elena and Nikos didn't ask me anything personal. They simply showed me how to live off the land, how to gather eggs from the chickens, how to hang laundry to catch the mountain breeze just right. Each task was simple but satisfying, and it felt like I was rediscovering something I had lost, a connection to something real, something that didn't involve expectations or pretenses. One afternoon, after I had spent hours working in the garden with Nikos, Elena pulled me aside. She gestured to the house and then to the fields, and with her limited English, she asked, "Home? You want go home?" Her question caught me off guard. Home? The word felt foreign now. The sleek brownstone in Boston, the life I had shared with Gabriel, it seemed so far away. Home, I realized, wasn't just a place. It was a feeling, something I had lost somewhere along the way. I didn't know how to respond. The idea of returning to my old life felt suffocating, but leaving this place, leaving Elena and Nikos, seemed impossible too. I had nowhere else to go. But slowly, over the next few days, something shifted inside me. I began to feel a sense of peace here, something I hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't a life of luxury or convenience, but it was real. There was purpose in the work, connection in the simplicity. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was learning to take care of myself, not through Gabriel's control, but on my own terms. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going back to the life I had left behind. This small village, with its olive groves and its slow pace, was where I was starting over. And for the first time, I felt like I was finally starting to live again. The days in the small Greek village slowly turned into weeks, and I found myself settling into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. The work was hard, but it was honest, and for the first time I could feel myself shedding the layers of stress and self-doubt that had accumulated over the years with Gabriel. I learned to collect olives with Nikos, my hands toughening as I worked alongside him. Each bruise and callus a small reminder of how much I had changed. The rhythm of farm life, the steady pace of the work, the quiet evenings spent with Elena, it was all a far cry from the frenetic pace I had lived back home. Yet, despite the peace I felt, there was still a gnawing emptiness. Gabriel was never far from my thoughts. The anger I had felt in the days following his abandonment still burned deep, and every time I looked at my phone, still dead from the trip, I felt a pang of something I couldn't quite place. Part of me wanted to believe that I was finally free, but there were moments when I doubted myself. Could I really do this alone? Could I rebuild my life without the security of Gabriel's wealth, without the stability of our old routine? It wasn't easy to ignore the part of me that had been conditioned to believe I couldn't survive without him. One afternoon, as I worked alongside Nikos in the grove, a thought crossed my mind. What if I didn't have to do this alone? What if I could find a way to make this new life work? Not just for myself, but with others who saw value in what I had to offer. Elena had been quiet, watching from a distance, as she often did, her gentle presence always there when I needed it most. I had come to think of her and Nikos not just as people who had taken me in, but as family. The kindness they showed me was something I hadn't known I needed, and the more I learned about their life, the more I admired their strength. They had built everything they had from the ground up, without any expectations of recognition or rewards. It was something I had forgotten, how to work for something without needing to prove my worth to anyone but myself. That evening, as we sat around a modest dinner table, Elena turned to me, her eyes thoughtful. "You learn fast," she said in her broken English, her voice tinged with pride. "You work hard, help here. You stay, work, we teach you everything." I stared at her, not fully understanding at first. She was offering me something, but what? My heart raced as I realized that she was offering me more than just a place to stay or a job to do. She was offering me a future. Nikos added, "We no need help now, but in future, we need young hands, good heart. You have good heart." I was speechless. The reality of their offer hit me like a wave. Could I stay here? Could I truly start over in this village with Elena and Nikos, learn the ways of the farm, and eventually make it my own? The thought both terrified and thrilled me. For the first time, I began to see the possibility of a life that was entirely mine, one built on hard work, community, and self-respect, not the controlling grasp of someone who had always made decisions for me. That night, I lay awake in the small room, listening to the sounds of the village as it settled into the quiet of the night. The breeze rustled through the olive trees, and for the first time, I felt at peace. I wasn't ready to go back to the life I had before. I couldn't. But here in this small village, I felt something I hadn't known in years. Hope. The next morning, Elena and Nikos set to work and I followed them, my hands eager to learn. As I picked olives from the trees, each movement felt more purposeful, more grounded. I wasn't just collecting fruit anymore. I was collecting the fragments of myself that had been lost. Slowly, I was becoming whole again, and in that moment, I realized something. I had a choice. I could stay here in this village that had embraced me and build a new life, or I could return to the life I had left behind, one of luxury and control, but also of emotional suffocation. The decision seemed so clear now. I wasn't going back to Gabriel. I was going forward, and for the first time, I could see that my future was mine to shape. Days turned into weeks, and I settled deeper into the rhythm of life in the village. Each day, I grew more connected to the land and to Elena and Nikos. Their world was simple, but it felt real. Every task had a purpose. Every action had meaning. The physical labor, harvesting olives, tending to the land, and learning how to care for the animals, was exhausting but fulfilling in ways I had never known. I began to see the value in hard work, in the sweat of my own hands, something Gabriel's world of luxury and status had never allowed me to experience. But despite the satisfaction I felt from the work, there was still a part of me that struggled. The past was never far from my mind. Every time I worked alongside Nikos in the grove, the thought of Gabriel nagged at me, lurking in the back of my mind. It wasn't just the abandonment or the humiliation of it all, it was the years I had spent slowly losing myself in our marriage. I had allowed myself to become small, to shrink under the weight of his expectations. I had lost my independence. Elena and Nikos had given me something I hadn't even known I was craving, the ability to make my own choices. I was no longer just the wife of a respected architect in Boston. I wasn't the woman who had tucked her dreams and ambitions away for the sake of a marriage that had never really cared for her. I was Alexis, a woman who had found her own strength again, who could make decisions for herself, without the looming shadow of someone else's control. One evening, as we sat around the small kitchen table, Elena turned to me with a serious look on her face. "You work hard," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You can do more. You learn fast. Nikos and we think you can help us, not just here but in future." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Could it be? Was she suggesting that I could do more here? That I could be a part of something bigger than just labor? The possibility of more was terrifying and exciting all at once. Nikos added, "We're old now. Maybe we'll retire in a few years. The trees, the oil, it will need young hands. We've no children, but you can help. You know the land now. You're part of this." My breath caught in my throat. They were offering me something far more than just a place to stay. They were offering me a future. The future I had always dreamed of, but had been too afraid to reach for. Could I really become part of their world? Could I run this farm, this business, after they retired? It felt overwhelming, but at the same time, it felt like destiny. This was where I belonged now. Here, in this small village, I had found a sense of purpose I had never experienced before. The offer wasn't just about working alongside them, it was about building something together. It wasn't just a partnership. It was a chance to create something that could stand the test of time. The thought of running the farm, of continuing their legacy, filled me with a sense of pride I hadn't felt in years. But there was still a part of me that hesitated. The life I had left behind in Boston, the life with Gabriel, was so far removed from the life I was now building. Could I really give up everything I had once known? The luxury, the comfort, the security? But as I looked around at the olive trees and the simple beauty of the farm, I knew deep down that this was the life I had been searching for. This was where I had found myself again. I looked at Elena and Nikos, their faces filled with hope and trust. They were offering me more than just work. They were offering me a family, a chance to be part of something that was real and enduring. The decision, though monumental, felt right. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was ready to embrace it. As I walked out into the grove later that night, the moon casting a silver glow over the trees, I felt a deep sense of peace. I was no longer the woman who had been left behind in Italy. I was no longer the woman who had been controlled and diminished. I was Alexis, a woman who had reclaimed her independence, and I was ready to build my future. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was walking it with my head held high.